Welcome to the Intuitive Rising podcast. I'm your host, Amy Brooks. Up until about 5 years ago, I was your average mom of three. It was after the sudden loss of my father that my life changed forever and the rising within me began. Since then, I've embraced my gifts and have stepped into my role as an evidential psychic medium, past life reader, higher self mentor, holy fire Reiki practitioner, and published author. In this podcast, we will talk all things spiritual and healing through a very grounded and relatable approach. I hope you'll continue to join me each week, remembering who you always were as we rise together. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Intuitive Rising podcast. I'm your host, Amy Brooks, and today's episode is an interview with someone who I really enjoyed speaking to. So today we're speaking with Theresa Nguyen. Theresa is a dragon channel and an energy healer. She also works with sound healing. So this was a really interesting conversation. She is such a compassionate, lovely person. And I really felt drawn to do this interview with her. I do speak about this a little bit at the beginning of our chat. I kind of tell her and you, the listener, how this came about, how she reached out to me, and how I slept on it, to make sure that this was a good aligned decision for me, and how I received that validation from spirit. So definitely felt it was an aligned connection, had the numbers speaking to us during the session. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Theresa, and then I'm going to share some cards that I pulled before our session when I asked Spirit, what is this connection about, or what will this conversation, lead to, or what's the impact that you, the listener, may feel, or how this is going to energetically affect you moving forward, and how Theresa and I working together with our voices in this episode, how energetically, like what's that doing? And so we got two cards, and I will reveal that and tell you what Spirit said about this connection. So like I said, she's a dragon channel, an energy healer, and a speaker. She lives in Texas in the United States, but is from Minnesota. I know that I have some listeners in Minnesota that I talk to quite regularly, so I know that you guys will love that. Shout out to Minnesota. She's an amazing lady. So just from her social media here, I'm going to read this to you. She says, I'm just a girl from Minnesota who was raised by refugee parents. My parents were among the last refugees to escape Vietnam during the fall of Saigon. Through luck and divine intervention, I was the first child and first generation born in the U.S. Today, I am living the American dream. My mission is to humanize the immigrant and refugee experience, break down the barriers that keep us separated, and help us see that we are all humans who have similar interests, desires, and dreams. What a beautiful mission statement. Absolutely, she lives and breathes that mission statement. You will see in this interview, there's just a deep compassion and humility within her, and I so appreciated it. And there were times at this interview that I felt like I was going to cry. I felt a little bit emotional at times as she was speaking about her experience. She has the coolest origin story. When I asked her, like, how did you get into this work? And the story she shared is very in-depth, amazing storyteller Theresa is. And not only that, it's very interesting and very cool. And the whole time I'm like at the edge of my seat listening to this story. So I think you're really going to enjoy it. I just got goosey bumps as I said that. Now I'm going to reveal these cards. I did, of course, pull from the Dragon Oracle cards by Diana Cooper. And I'm not super familiar with this deck because I don't use it very often. So I am going to go into the guidebook to read off a little of what each of these cards are saying to us. So, page 46. There we go. I'm going to get there one day. Page 46. So the first one that comes up, which I loved, I smiled definitely, was Kuan Yin, Pink Dragon. Now, Kuan Yin has come in for me multiple times in energy work. So when I'm doing meditation, sitting in the power, There's been certain, synchronicities and connections that have been made through like reading books and, having people mention her. And it's just shown up in my world a lot. And about, I want to say maybe 6.5 years ago, I had a mediumship session with someone over the phone. And so this was me being read. It was before I stepped into my work as a psychic medium myself. And she brought through Nguyen, and she brought through my paternal grandmother, actually. And my maternal grandmother and I didn't always like connect well. There was like a lot of like family ancestral trauma and things that were happening there. And so, I just didn't feel that close bond with her like I did with my maternal grandmother, who you guys know passed away, transitioned to the spirit world a few weeks ago, and who I talk about all the time. I didn't have that connection and bond with this other grandmother. And so I was surprised that she came through in this mediumship reading for me. But she definitely validated her experience. She brought through a ton of stuff that was specific and relevant to her and to me. One of the things that she brought through was like that she was so in awe of my compassion and the depth of my compassion, and that compassion was a gift of mine, and it was something that needed to be shared and was being shared, but like intentionally being shared as a healer. And so, like I said, this is before I stepped in to my path in this role. So I thought that was really, really beautiful. And I thought it was really, really beautiful that she came in today for a message for Theresa and I, and the connection that we made today in the conversation that we had. So the card says, brings firm love that resets your karmic balance. See all your cords dissolved by transcendent love. Enjoy your freedom and look for the divine around you. Choosing this card offers you an opportunity to heal all of your relationships, including those from past lives that you may be aware of. This is very significant because Theresa does talk about bringing forward in her sessions the traumas that we're not always aware of. And that's what the dragons like to help heal. Ask Kuan Yin's beautiful pale pink dragons to dissolve the cords that still tie you to others and sit quietly while they do so. You may sense or feel them releasing you completely. Take a moment to feel the freedom that this offers you. These great-hearted dragons will then help you to see with eyes of love. Look for the divine in everyone and be aware of all the situations from a higher understanding. These gracious dragons will enable you to enrich your relationships and transform your friendships. They will help you to treat all people with greater respect, care, and love than ever before. Once you listen to this conversation, you're going to know why that is so, so significant, and absolutely something that Theresa is doing in her healing sessions, and what she experienced when she, had these experiences for herself. There was another card. I am going to read it as well. It is the Fire and Water Dragon. Okay, page 36. Okay, so here we go. This is what it looks like. So the card says, enable your life to flow with loving grace, prepare for change, to move forward quickly, expect the unexpected, and have fun. Call on fire and water dragons whenever you face big changes, decisions, or challenges on your pathway. They will push you through times of inertia or fatigue by filling you with new expectation and excitement. Once you have made up your mind, they will bolster your energy and give you thrust and determination. They also love to play and fun and will lighten you up. Your guidance now is to be prepared for rapid change in your life as you're being propelled into a higher state of being. If you make up your mind about the direction you wish to take, these dragons will push you on with grace and surprising ease. If you're not clear, you may find something arises that you hadn't anticipated. So expect the unexpected and enjoy the changes coming to you. I think that is absolutely a nod to Theresa's initiation into the world of dragon healing. Thank you so much for listening today, risers. Continue to listen and enjoy this amazing interview and experience. Hello, everyone. Hello, Theresa.
Hey, Amy.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Intuitive Rising podcast. I have a special guest today. We have Theresa here, and what is your official title? I'd love to know. Is it
It
a
kind of changes,
energy
but
healing?
right now it's Dragon Channel, energy sound therapist, speaker, and nurse.
Wow. So, jack of all trades. I definitely felt like there was more to you than just meets the eye. Like I definitely feel like there's a whole bunch of stuff. Um, this is not our first encounter. I did sit in on one of your online sessions that you do, which you can tell us all about in just a moment. But I really felt like a connection to your energy in that, and knew this was an aligned interview and connection. And I just briefly want to share, and I think I might have shared this with you, but I want to share the thing that happened that made me realize this was an aligned connection.
Mhm.
So you reached out to me on Instagram, and talked about coming on the show, and I always let things kind of brew, so I slept on it. That's what I'm supposed to do as a generator. I don't know if you're familiar with human design or not, but I'm
Yeah.
learning to wait to respond. I'm an emotional generator, I should say. So I sleep on it, and then the next morning I felt called to go to a copy of the book that I published in. So it's a collaborative book series. And the very fact that I was drawn to look at it, and then I went, wait a second. Okay, I know why I'm drawn to this, because the title of my chapter is called Running Towards the Dragon. I thought, okay, thank you, Spirit. This is a yes from me. So I reached out and I let you know. And then actually immediately after that, I had a bit of like a connection to my grandmother in spirit. She recently just passed at the end of May. She was my biggest fan, and I was her biggest fan. And the copy of the book that I had on my desk that I felt called to look at was her copy of
Mhm.
the book. And when I picked it up, a piece of paper dropped out of it that I hadn't previously seen, and I had like flipped through the book multiple times over the last couple of weeks, and it was a note that she had written about like key points about what I wrote about and like what she thought about it, and it was like
Oh
such a
my
gift to me in
gosh.
that moment. I was like, oh my god, I just felt like how it's a beautiful example of like how spirit leads you to things
Yeah.
and to people, yeah, and how if we have that awareness of spirit, how they can connect us all and give us such beautiful messages.
Yeah,
So thank you.
absolutely.
Thank
Yeah,
you for
you're
reaching out,
welcome.
because I felt like that led me to then finding this note. And and I'm really excited to connect to you and to introduce you to the Intuitive Rising community. We're really excited. I've had a few people go, "What's dragon energy healing?" Like when I posted and tagged you in the
Yeah.
story
Yeah.
after the session. So the first
I
question I
love I
have is
love
like,
that. I love it when
oh,
people say, "What is dragon energy?"
like what
Because I'm
is
like,
that?
"Oh, yay, I get to be the first to share it with them."
Yeah, one person was like, I don't know what that is, but I know I need to know more. And I was like, this is her tag. Go give her a follow, and she did right away. You know when things are like when you're drawn to something like that, like you just have to step forward and explore it and
Mhm.
see why. So the first question I have is like, who are you? What's your background? What's your story? And how did you get into? I'm assuming this is your spiritual path and part of your spiritual path,
Yeah.
but did you start out this way?
No.
No.
Like, this is
I
like
love to
the
hear the
last
origin.
thing I'd ever thought I would do. So
Yeah.
I'm the daughter of Vietnamese refugees. My parents escaped Vietnam during the fall of Saigon. And like many refugees, they come here for opportunity. And you raise your children, like many families, um, so that they are set up um, in a way that, the previous generation was. You want to do better than the previous generation. And
Mhm.
so I did like the normal things. Went to school. I got my master's degree in nursing, and I worked. And a few years into it, one of my friends became an entrepreneur, and she wanted me to join her. And that was like the weirdest thing to me, because I'm like, well, that is like no one's ever talked to me about it, which is kind of strange because my parents were also entrepreneurs, but
Mhm.
they didn't do as well as they wanted to. And so the message to us was stay with the 9 to 5, because if you try to do your own thing, you're going to fail. You're going to struggle. Like it's a lot of sacrifice, and that's what I saw in their story. Sacrifice, loss of sleep, stress, like my parents literally slept in supply room closets because they were full time and then they ran two restaurants. So they just didn't have time to sleep. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was my story. Like I took it on as my story. And so then I thought my path was always going to be a 9 to 5. Well, when I did decide that I was going to do this part time side hustle, I got to a point where I was like plateauing. I didn't know why. And I was doing all the things. And, I was getting coaching sessions, and everybody was like, well, we have no idea what you're doing wrong. So I thought, well, maybe it's like a something like a spiritual block or something. And at that point, I like really was not into the spiritual world or anything like that. Like, when we were younger, we played Bloody Mary and light as a feather, stiff as a board, that kind of thing. But
Yeah, yeah.
it was just for fun. Like I wouldn't, it
Yeah.
wasn't anything serious. Or so, anyways, I decided I was going to hire a spiritual mentor to help me promote in my business. And what ended up happening was she through my work with her, we my third eye opened, like literally. Like I remember going into my bedroom one day. It was around 10 in the morning, and I plopped myself on the bed. I put my arm like over my eyes like this, and I was just breathing because I was just exhausted. And then it was like this little tiny pinpoint white pulsating light. It was
Mm-hmm.
just tiny. And I was like, oh, what is that? And then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it turned into this like 6 point pulsing star. And then it started forming like this circle, this green ring around it. And it was like this bright, almost fluorescent green. And everything just started pulsing. And then around the
Mm-hmm.
green was like this, it was almost like yellow. And then it just kind of got more illuminated. And I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was really cool. I'm like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
that's like really awesome. I've
Yeah.
never seen that before. So then I decided I was going to take my arm off and I was going to try it again to see if it worked, whatever I was doing. And
Yeah.
this time, instead of green, it turned blue. And the following week, I told my mentor what happened. She's like, oh my God, Theresa, you're a ripe avocado right now. Like, we really need to dig into this. And I was like, no, like, I just want to make money. Tell me how I can make money in my
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
So, the connection to my spiritual gifts and things like that, um, it was this pattern where as soon as something revealed itself, I kind of pulled back because I think subconsciously I just like, I wasn't ready,
Yeah.
I just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't ready. But I didn't say that consciously. Consciously, it
Mm-hmm.
was just, I was focused on something else.
Right.
So eventually that business just was no longer in alignment with what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it brought me into the world of spirituality. And I think it was um, my very first reading by a man named Troy Parkinson. He was a medium psychic,
Mm-hmm.
and it was during Halloween. And we went to a haunted house, and
Yeah.
he was doing readings.
Mm-hmm.
It was super fun. It was a huge group of about 10 to 12 of us, and I wasn't expecting anything. I didn't know any of my past relatives who had died. I didn't have anyone who I loved pass away yet either. So I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really expecting anything. And when he came to me, he was telling me that um, my grandmother, my mom's mom, was here to share a message. And the message was that I was stepping into my powers and that I'm going to be this amazing healer. And that I have like this line of ancestors who were not able to express themselves in their gifts. And so lucky me, I get them now. And I was like, what does that mean? It's just,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't overwhelmed. I was just like, this is weird. And I don't really like this message because it has nothing to do with what I want to do in my life right now. So he
Right.
gave me this amazing, beautiful message. In retrospect, I
Yes.
remember it. But in that moment, I was like, oh, well, you know, I wish it was something different. Like, tell
Yeah.
me what I need to do right now to make like,
Yeah.
because I'm still so attached to, the success of like the numbers in my bank account, versus the feeling of what it means to be alive and the feeling of serving people in a way that changes lives, you know?
Hmm.
And I was a
Yeah.
nurse, and so I was changing lives in different ways, but it was burning me out, you know?
Yes.
I wasn't in it anymore for the right reasons. And so my journey continues with continue to kind of explore what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And with every exploration came another experience.
Hmm.
So I'm going to fast forward a little bit
Okay.
to uh, my first plant medicine experience. And even though I didn't realize that was my first taste of what the dragons felt like, um, I can say it that it was, but in that moment, I didn't know what it was really. I just thought it was my other spirit, my other guides, you know,
Right.
which I'm sure it was too. But the dragon was coming up also. So there, I had another mentor. I was resonating towards her because I was born the year of the dragon in the Vietnamese zodiac,
Okay.
and she was offering something called Dragon Reiki. I thought, oh, that's so cool. You know, I've never heard of that. So I decided to attend one of her sessions, and during the session, um, I was invited to this this bonfire, but it was just me and this other man. He almost looked like this old Eastern Indian man. He had a turban. You know, he didn't talk to me. He just told me to come. So I sat down, and within this fire was a breathing dragon, and it just like rose up from the
Hmm.
flames, and it was so cool. Again, I didn't really know what that was. I just thought it was really cool. And so I was telling, her name is Electra. I was telling Electra what happened. She's like, you know, you work with dragons. I was like, well, I was born in the year of the dragon, so I guess, you know, that would make sense. But
Yeah.
I didn't work with energy or spirituality in that way. It was just me as a student, someone who's learning, you know. But as think of me just as a client, right? I was just a
Yeah.
client at that point,
Yeah.
not invested in anything. And a year later, she contacted me and asked if I wanted to participate in a plant medicine ceremony, and it's called Bufo. It is toad medicine, and
Okay.
she told me not to look it up because everything that I will see on the internet on YouTube will freak me out. And she said, if you trust me, you will come and you will come open. And she's like, I promise you, if you come open, that you will have the most amazing experience. And she's like, it'll be just pure unconditional love.
Hmm.
And how do you describe unconditional love, right? So
Yeah.
I was very curious about that. I showed up, and the moment I showed up, I freaked out because it was on this farm, like in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know anyone except for Electra, all these strangers, and it felt not dangerous, but powerful. So it was
Yeah.
unfamiliar. And so I
Hmm.
freaked myself out. And when I walked in, they were also already kind of in the middle of another ceremony. And it's one that forces you to purge. So as I'm walking in, people are running to the trash and they're
Oh.
throwing up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this what I'm going
Yeah.
to be doing? Just totally freaked out. I wanted to leave so
Yeah.
bad, Amy. I wanted to leave so bad. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
not for me. Like, I need to leave. And I'm like, okay, well, just like, let's just freaking chill out right now. Okay. Like, you trust Electra. She would not like put you in danger.
Yeah.
She knows, like, she's always looking out for your best interest. So I just kind of had to like speak to myself in that way.
Hmm.
And then when the time came to participate in this ceremony, the new people got to go first. So I was part of that new group, but I wasn't one of the first. I got to observe. And everybody had a very different experience. There's some people who were completely zen, some people who were rolling around in the ground in pain. Some
Yeah.
people were like screaming, like upset, so much anger, you know?
Hmm.
And again, it just only created more fear and anxiety.
Hmm.
I think she felt that because she went around giving everybody a puff of weed to kind of like calm
Chill.
us down.
I
So
love it.
I took a few puffs of that to kind of like chill out, you know?
Yeah.
And then when it finally came to my turn, I think I was, you know, not calm, but just clear-headed a little bit so that I wasn't taking on anybody else's
Mm-hmm.
experiences or setting any expectations for what it might look like for me. And so you smoke it through a pipe,
Right.
and you take a deep, deep, deep inhale until basically your body feels weightless. And that's exactly how it felt. So I took a big inhale and it filled my body. And suddenly I felt like I wasn't, like my body wasn't there anymore. And you fall to the ground.
Wow.
And from there, the experience was very profound. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it started with just me feeling like I was free falling, like I was falling into an abyss, like down, 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 down. And I
Yeah.
was still in my body, meaning I was still aware. So I was
Yeah.
freaking out a little bit. And as soon as
Mm-hmm.
I freaked out, I started feeling nauseous. So then I
Mm-hmm.
remember her telling me before I had gotten in there, she's like, just surrender to it. So I was like, I don't know what that means, but I'm just going to breathe, because that's the
Yeah.
only thing that I can think of in terms of how to surrender to this. So I started breathing. And when I started to inhale, it was as if my inhale was endless. I couldn't stop. Like I just kept inhaling and there was no end to it. And so I had to stop myself and I'm like, okay, it's time to exhale. So then I would exhale and it was the
Yeah.
same thing. It was the coolest and weirdest experience. It was like
Yeah.
I wasn't even human anymore. It's so. Anyways, I as I was trying to kind of get rid of this feeling of nausea, as my body was continuing to fall into some sort of endless abyss, my body started burning up. Like it felt so hot. I literally felt like I was in the you know a pit of fire or something. I didn't feel pain. It was just hot, so hot.
Mm-hmm.
It was unbearable. And then this voice in my belly told me to stick out my tongue. And I started having conversation with it because I was like,
Right.
no, that's weird. I'm around all these people. I don't know them. I had to remember, I'm
Excuse me.
still falling down into the abyss. The fire is going around inside me.
Yeah.
I'm breathing, and this voice in my belly is saying, "Stick out your tongue." And I kept saying no, and then she was finally like, "Stick out your tongue." And then I was like, "Okay." So
Okay.
then, so then I was like, I'm just gonna do this. I'm here. I'm just gonna do. So then if you've seen um, Kalima, she's like the goddess of death and transformation. She's a Hindu
Mm-hmm.
goddess. That's what she does.
Mm-hmm.
She sticks out her tongue. She's very like if you
Okay.
see an image, she's the one with the dead skulls.
Right.
The skulls all over her neck. So she looks scary, but she
Yeah.
is all about the death of one life transition to another, like one phase of your life to another. So
Mm-hmm.
she was telling me, this is you in the full expression of who you're, becoming. This is my translation of it in hindsight.
Yes.
In the moment, I just stuck out my tongue. And as soon as I stuck out my tongue, though, I started screaming. I screamed so loud that I felt like it was echoing, it was so loud, it was echoing to like the edges of the earth because I was screaming and I was screaming. I felt like I was screaming for my ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
this reclamation of like standing up for who we are, for being able to claim our power, for being able to claim like all the things that I denied within
Yeah.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and as soon as I did that, it was like my body. I just felt like my body exploded. I don't know how else to describe it. It was just so visceral and so
Mm-hmm.
um, dynamic and um, so full of different senses everywhere, and the words to describe it, there just aren't enough words or the right
Mm-hmm.
words to describe it, so I'm doing a
Yeah.
poor job at it. But then I was like, okay. And after I screamed that one time, she's like, do it again. So then I screamed, and this time I just let everything that I was holding on to, I just let it out. And then
Mm-hmm.
I just felt so free, you know, and then they started showing me these beautiful sacred geometry and
Mm-hmm.
like the mandalas that you see, like they showed me all of those, and it was just like everything was just coming into my field of vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of opened my eyes a little bit because I was curious to see if my perception of the world was changed, like
Was different.
literally
Mm-hmm.
my vision changed. And when I opened my eyes, like everything was so much more enhanced. You know, it was you
Yes.
times 10. I don't know how else to describe it. And,
Yes.
and I was looking around and I saw my mentor and I saw the facilitators. And, you know, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And then I looked over to my right and then I saw the people who I judged so much walking in, holding space for me and you know, loving me and
Mm-hmm.
um, just being there to support me. And
Yeah.
it was a full expression of unconditional love, of
Yeah.
being vulnerable and doing what I thought was like so weird. And then
Yeah.
these people, you know, they just thought it was so beautiful, you know, and they were
Mm-hmm.
so accepting of me. And they're like, and I could feel it, you know, I could feel
Mm-hmm.
this kindness and this deep love for me, for my soul. And
Yeah.
then I remember looking up at the trees, and the branches were probably 30, 40 feet up um, from the ground. And as I looked up, the leaves started talking to me. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they weren't speaking in the English, but it was like acknowledging and loving me and
Mm-hmm.
just helping me learn that, you know, there is this like oneness and what it
Yes.
means to be one. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and my intention before I went into it was to meet my spiritual team, you know, and so
Yeah.
it's like I met one of
You
them. I'm
did.
sure others were there, but I really only focused on Kali.
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful, but it was very powerful and it scared the crap out of me. And so there it is, another pattern where it was too much for me and I
Yeah.
scaled back. And so I
Mm-hmm.
stopped. And what's interesting about this medicine is that while it's only in your system for a few hours, so I think it's like 5 or 6 hours or something,
Mm-hmm.
spiritually it's working and it'll work with
Yeah.
you for months. And so
Yeah.
I would wake up with these types of experiences and I didn't know how to integrate, you know, it was too much for me. And so I went
Mm-hmm.
back to normal life for another year or so. And one of my friends, she had told me that she wanted to have a spiritual experience with some sort of plant medicine. And I'd
Mm-hmm.
never told anyone about this. It was to
Mm-hmm.
me, it was too freaky. You know, I didn't tell
Yeah.
anybody. And when she said that, I was like, okay, like she would be someone I feel I was safe to share. So I told her, and she's like, oh my gosh, I have to do that. And while she was saying that, it was like the medicine, the bufo medicine was, it had been calling me back. You know, as much as I was resistant, it had been calling me back to do it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, you know what? If you do it, I'll do it because one, now I know somebody and I'll totally feel safe with you. And two,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of know what to expect. Not that it's going to be the
Mm-hmm.
same, but I kind of like have an idea. And
Yeah.
so I was less scared of it. So the second
Mm-hmm.
time that we went, um, this one was different, still just as powerful. And same process where you smoke it and then you smoke it until basically you surrender. And as I'm
Yeah.
surrendering again, I kind of felt like that free fall kind of
Yeah.
feeling. And then I started, my tongue wanted to move around. And I have this relationship with sexuality where there's a lot of shame, you know, and so the
Yeah.
tongue really was like in my mind, like a symbol of like some sort of like sexual
Yeah.
um, expression, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
was really not wanting to do it. But then again, every time I resisted, I would feel like the nausea. So then I had to kind
Right.
of just give into it. And as I started allowing myself to just do my body, what it wanted, it started actually it started like this, started going like, and then
Yeah.
it started doing almost like a warrior call, like,
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so I just kind of allowed it. And in the meantime, I'm still kind of like, see, this is the problem. It's like my mind, I'm so analytical that it's hard for me to surrender. But I know if
Yeah.
I don't surrender, then I'm going to start purging because they also know I hate vomiting. So there's almost
Right.
like, it's almost like this weird, like they're trying to balance in order for me to have the experience, in order for me to continue healing too, right? So I'm going
That's
through this
interesting.
and this is happening. And then suddenly there's this life review where I all the lifetimes, this lifetime, past lifetimes have been presented to me in literally like what feels like 3 seconds. And I wake up and I look at Electra and I start pounding on the ground and saying, this was like, the world was not meant to be this way. Like this was not how it was supposed to be. You know, I said,
Mhm. Yeah.
what happened? You know, like, how did we let it get this bad? Like, why is there so much suffering? Why
Yeah.
is there so much separation? Why are there so many people like hurting and wanting to hurt others? And it was so like, I was so hysterical. She kind of had to like hold me down. Um,
Yeah.
and and in that moment, I thought I was already out in terms of out of the experience.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I was like, happiness and joy should be our birthright, And she was so like, she's such a wonderful space holder, She was like, yes, we are going to change the timelines. What is it that you want? Tell me what it is that you want. We are going to change the timelines right now, And I was like, I
Hmm.
want everyone to have a good piece of steak, and I want everyone to be able to go to five-star restaurants, and I want everyone to, basically have all the
Yeah.
joys and pleasures in life,
Yeah.
and everything that this world and life is able to offer us. I want everyone to be able to experience anything and everything that they want. And she was like, okay, and then suddenly I just kind of felt like really sleepy and tired, because I think it was the medicine
Hmm.
kind of bringing me back down. And I was coming back down again, she started playing the singing bowls on my back. I would laying on my side, and she starts playing the bowls on my back. And as she started playing, the tongue wanted to move. And this time, as I'm looking back, I'm pretty sure this was the dragon.
Hmm.
And this time, it was just me making the kind of noise.
Hmm.
And I wasn't interpreting it then. I would think I was just so tired and exhausted and in so much surrender that I was like, I don't even care what I look like. I don't care what I do. Let's just get it done and over with,
Yeah.
And so that was my second experience, and it was so powerful. And again, too much for me. I was thinking, this is too much. I can't do this. Like, I can't change the world. I can't hold like everyone's suffering on my shoulders. That's how I felt. Like I was
Yeah.
holding everyone's suffering on my shoulders. I'm like, it's too much. I'm just gonna go back again to normal life. And then fast forward again, I think it was 2 years later. I went to one or two, anyways, timeline doesn't matter. I went
Yeah.
to another retreat. I went to a retreat in Mount Shasta, and this was like the full on dragon activation. I was on, I was not on any plant medicine. This was all due to a sound bath, basically. And I'm pretty sure because
Hmm.
I was on Mount Shasta.
Yeah.
So, those of you who don't know what Mount Shasta it is one of the major chakras of the earth. And
Yeah.
I didn't know that at the time. But the dragon energy is very powerful there. And before going, I knew something was going to happen. I just had this feeling. I didn't know when, I didn't know what. I just knew I would have an experience. And I told my
Mm-hmm.
friend Amy, who was the main facilitator of this retreat, that something's going to happen and I need you to know and I need you to be there because I won't feel safe if you're not right there next
Mm-hmm.
to me, you know? And so the first night, when I heard there was a sound bath, I told her, that's it. I think that's when it's going to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
only because when Electra started playing the bowls on my back, you know, the tongue started moving. And it kind
Right.
of gave me a reminder of what might happen. And so as when I walked into the mama yurt, my heart started racing. I could not stop it, Amy. It was beating 1,000 miles a minute. Like, and I
Yeah.
felt like it was coming out of my chest. And as
Yeah.
much as I tried the slow breaths, as much as I just tried to close my eyes, as much as I tried to do everything to calm myself down, it wasn't stopping. And so then we started, and the facilitator, the sound facilitator, she started drumming. And when she drumming, it made it worse. It made it feel like I had to really surrender again. And I didn't want
Yes.
to because there were about 20 women again, but the majority of I did not know. And I was part of the retreat, so I didn't want to scare them. I didn't want to be, the freak that like did crazy things in a sound bath, and now for the rest of the weekend they're freaked out by me. That was what I was thinking.
Right.
But the more I resisted, the stronger the urge got. It just got to a point where I couldn't anymore. I couldn't hold or
Mm-hmm.
resist anymore. And then suddenly that's when the dragons came through, and they were like the full expression of dragon. And it was sounds and noises that I've never made in my entire life intentionally or even
Right.
unintentionally, And so it started. I mean, now that I'm more comfortable talking about it, I can actually make the noises. But it started like this. It started going,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I thought that was so weird that they were tongue rolling. I'm like, oh my God, this is so weird. But it's like I wasn't telling myself to do it. It was just happening,
It's just happening.
And while it was happening, my body started to convulse. It started to not like a seizure, but like, like I couldn't. It was involuntary. And as soon as I started making the sound, Amy came right over, and she was right there, and she was holding, or she was touching my head. And Amy's a, a trans channel for a group called the Collective of oh shoot, they're gonna kill me. The 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 collective of light. Oh my gosh, they're gonna kill me. Anyways, I call
It's
them
okay.
the
It
COL
might
because
come
I can't
back.
always remember. Anyways, she's an experienced healer and channeler. And so she was there, and she was telling me afterwards that as I was going through that experience, they were channeling through her and telling her which chakras to open so they could go through and which chakras to close when they
Oh,
left.
wow.
Yeah. And so it was such a a real experience, one that I could never deny, one that I could never say that never happened, one that I could never,
Yeah.
you know, second guess myself, because it was
Mm-hmm.
45 minutes nonstop of this, nonstop of
Yeah.
me making these sounds and feeling the energy run up and down my body and feel myself like having these
Wow.
convulsive movements. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, I wasn't scared. So I knew
Mm-hmm.
like that I was okay. One, because Amy was there, but two, because some of it felt familiar due to the Bufo experiences.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is what it is. This is what they are. And then I
Yeah.
saw four dragons. It was a red, green, blue, and now I can't remember if it was black or purple, but they were all, I remember them flying up in the mama yurt, as I opened my eyes. And they were having a lot of fun, Amy. I mean, they were trying to figure out where their wings were, where their tail was, in this little tiny human body. They're like, she's so little, like there's nothing to this,
Yeah.
And so I think the energy is like so powerful. That's why the energy is so powerful, because
Yeah.
there's such big beings and big energy.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is afterwards, I wanted to share it with the people who attended because, it wasn't like it was me. Oh, and then I forgot, like, as the sound facilitators were, moving through the sound healing, the dragons started toning with them. So they started harmonizing, they started singing, and I don't sing in the way that they were singing. I don't sing, even though it
Right.
was me, my body, I don't sing like that. And so afterwards, when I was sharing with the attendees what had happened, because I didn't want, you know, to pretend like nothing happened, a few
Yeah.
of them came up to me later and they were like, Teresa, that was so cool what you did, because whatever it was, I felt I felt like it was familiar to me too, you know? And
Yeah.
so it was like almost like an activation for others
Yes.
there. Like through my physical
Mm-hmm.
activation, it was an activation for others there.
For
And that's
others.
kind of that basically is how I started channeling dragons and how I got introduced to the energy. But again, remember, big experiences, there's still like a scale back period. So again, scale back
Yeah.
until about I would say 6 months ago, and that's when I really came out and I was like, okay, enough's enough. I can't pretend.
Enough's enough.
I cannot pretend anymore, and I'm just gonna
Wow.
show up. And people are think it's freaky, and people have been very scared of it because of their own past conditioning.
Yep.
It's just different, and they were never no one's ever told them about it, in their upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
So now as an adult, it's
Mm-hmm.
very different. So it scares them.
Mm-hmm.
And but the majority of people, I think, have really embraced it or gotten curious and not immediately judged. And
Right.
it's been a really great experience. So yes, long
That's
story, but I felt like I
that's
had
a
to.
story. No, I was like invested the whole time. That's a great story. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that in great detail. And I so appreciate your vulnerability. I when you were talking, there was a few times I felt like I wanted to cry and I didn't know why, but I felt the emotion and the love. And you're right. There's nothing like that because when I connect to spirit, connecting in a different way, but connecting to spirit, I feel that unconditional love as well, and it's so hard to explain in human words,
Mhm.
but it changes your whole lens and view of life and every single person in it. Do you find that too?
Yes,
It just
absolutely.
changes everything. No, like I've always thought of myself as a compassionate person, but obviously we all have our, our conditioning and our different judgments about things. But like certainly the more that I work with spirit, and it's an evolution. I feel like it's our job is never done. When we're on our spiritual path, I think that we just keep growing and evolving, and we are, exposed to new things over and
Yes.
over again. And so thank you for exposing me to this, as I'm having a great time, but I had a great time in your virtual healing session, which I'd love for you to talk about in just a moment. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's just I think you did a great job in verbalizing and sharing your experience.
Oh,
And thank you
good.
for being vulnerable. It was amazing. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So that's how you
Yeah.
got into it. So it's kind of been newish, but not so much. But like since you've really surrendered and kind of stepped up and been like, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm also glad that you brought up how other people reacted, because one of my questions was like, what does your family think about that?
Yeah, they don't think it's real.
Yeah, yeah,
They play along, they don't think
right,
it's real,
yeah,
which is fine because that's kind of what I expected anyway,
yeah,
like that they weren't going to believe me. But I feel like it's not about believing me. It's really about like they're just not ready to be able to receive this kind of
that's right.
experience and
Hmm.
information right now. And
Yeah,
but they support me in what I do. So
yes, that's
that part
important.
is good. So long as they're not
That,
discouraging, I am
yeah,
completely okay with them not believing what I do, because I myself, know like that it's not an easy thing to believe. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Especially when you've been told dragons aren't real. But I can't say that anymore, right?
right. You
Yeah,
have to experience it. Yeah, thank you for sharing your honest thoughts about that, because that's a question that I often get from students and from clients is like, well, what did people think about it when you came out as a psychic medium, right? Because there's some fear there for people that are on that path and want to explore that, to share it because of all
mhm.
the kind of stigma and stuff around it. So I appreciate you saying they might not get it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't matter to you, right? It's still who you are and your truth. And I think that's what it's all about. I honestly view spiritual work sometimes like an initiation, from your soul, from spirit, like, okay, like,
Yeah,
let's do this.
definitely.
Let's work through the fears because
Yeah.
we help everybody else break through those fears as well,
Hmm.
by showing up in our own way.
Hmm.
So thank you for showing up. I think we
Oh,
need
thank you
more
for
people to
having
show
me.
up. Of course, it's so fun and I love your story. So what are the benefits to working? Like what have you found personally in your own life since you started doing this? But also, do you take on like one-on-one clients? Are you working with people now? So, and
Yeah.
like what
So,
have you found through that?
yeah. So it started with spiritual retreats. I didn't do one on one
Yeah.
until more recently because I really loved the group sessions, and the dragons like group sessions. The dragons like to be efficient in the healing, so they want me to
Yeah.
bring them groups of people. And the retreats, um, when we work with the dragon energy and the retreats, it is not for the faint of heart. So the retreats aren't, we sit there and meditate. It is a lot of emotional purging. It is a lot of
Hmm.
confrontation of your fears. It is a lot of like, let's just rip out that bullshit, like we are there to get the work done. And I tell that to the attendees all the time, like, this is not a relaxing weekend. If that's what you're looking for, there's plenty of retreats of that. Like, if you want
Yep.
something that's freaking life transformative, then this is it. And so that's how they work with them. And that's the benefit is we together, if when you allow yourself permission to, and give them permission to go there with you, you're able to heal yourself from some of the past trauma that basically has created this reality that you're not happy with. It's like
Hmm.
they say, like, I think my teacher told me, it's like the current reality that you're living in today is based on the last 60 to 90 days of your thoughts, behaviors, and actions that you've taken. So if none of that has changed or will change in the next 60 to 90 days, your reality isn't going to change either.
Right.
And so often, right, like we all have different, like spectrum. There's a whole spectrum of trauma, and everyone's trauma is measured subjectively.
Hmm.
So there's no trauma, like my trauma is not any worse than yours and vice versa, although we may
Right.
subjectively think that it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so people come with all different levels and experience of trauma. And so what happens is the dragons will, and spirits, their spiritual team will then bring up one or two moments that maybe not have been so obvious. And
Right.
it's those ones, it's the ones that we actually don't think about that need to be healed
Hmm.
first, right? Because
Hmm.
the ones that we know, those are so deeply rooted that it's going to take more than a retreat. It's going to
Yeah.
take more than a retreat to do that. So
Yeah.
what are the other underlying things that we need to take care of in order to free you of the big one? And
Hmm.
that's what they do. It's working with a lot of sort of like the shadow, the trauma, and then helping you to be your own guru. They're about you teaching yourself how to heal, you trusting yourself, in terms of the messages and the signs that you see.
Yeah.
It's you empowering yourself because in doing that, then you're making yourself seen. Like, 'cause you have to see yourself first before other people can see you, right? Because
That's
then
right.
you're self validating instead of asking others and
Hmm.
wanting this outside validation in order to make you feel like whole or make you
Yeah.
feel important. Um, and so they're here to help us as individuals so that we can raise the next generation. Whether or not you have kids, it doesn't matter. There's always going to be someone who's watching you who is from
Hmm.
the next generation. And so we must be
Hmm.
the models to show them, teach them, um, so that when we step into the golden age. It truly is the golden age of prosperity and success
Mm-hmm.
and love, and just this new era of potential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you're bringing that up. I believe that's coming too. That's come through to me from spirit before. I almost feel like before 2020 happened, like right at the beginning of 2020, before the pandemic and the lockdowns and all that. I remember feeling like I didn't pick up on COVID, but I definitely picked up on something is coming to dismantle the shit out of like everything. It almost feels like it's the first kind of thing to really shake things up. And I felt like this whole decade was kind of going to be difficult because we are literally dismantling and breaking apart all of the stuff and the structures that have kept us small. And so I feel like if we just, the empowerment message is so important because, it's kind of like you can actively, empower yourself to create what it is that you want to see. Or you can just hold on with your claws as,
Yeah.
the foundation you're standing on is falling apart from under your feet. Like we have to
Mhm.
create a new foundation and a foundation that we actually want to
Yes.
support us. And so, yeah,
Yes.
I love that the dragons come in for that.
Yeah.
I've never experienced too much with dragons before meeting you and doing this healing session. But I was recently reading something. I think it's called, I read so many books that like they get kind of blended and I'm like, what one was that from again? But I read a book called The Secret History of the World, which is really cool, by the way.
Hmm.
But it was kind of talking about how history and everything that's happened is just like a different level of consciousness,
Mm.
and how, dragons just exist on a different consciousness
Hmm.
level,
Hmm.
that they've always been there. And they used to be more in our realm, according to this book, right? And as
Hmm.
people's
Yes.
consciousness changed and
Yes.
their kind of thinking and logical brain developed, that kind of went away. Not, it didn't go away. We just lost our ability to perceive them. Do you agree with that in
Yeah.
any
So
way?
what my
Yeah.
team has told me, and is that, like, yes, dragons have been around before the time of creation. And when
Yes,
they
forever.
have been on this earth, um, there was a time of peace where, like,
Yes.
we all lived harmoniously. But then they
Yeah.
show me scenes of violence where humans then decided that, you know, dragons were things, not beings, and they found ways to control them. And that's when the dragons left, because they were like, "You're destroying us. Like, this is no longer a
Yeah.
partnership. This is no longer like us being able to live and help each other." Um,
Hmm.
and so, yeah, they left because our consciousness changed. You're right. It's like the
Yes.
way we were supposed, I don't want to say supposed to live, the way we, you know treat dragons. I'm saying humanity. The way we treated dragons are ways we've treated other humans,
Yes.
right? And so it's like this weird pattern of humanity. Like, when is it finally going to stop? And when
Hmm.
are we? Because it's really just a few very powerful people who are controlling the collective.
Yes.
When are
Hmm.
we going to wake up and band together and say it's enough? And that can be in many ways. You don't have to actually physically be there and like fight, but I
Yeah.
think people don't realize the power of energy, right? Like,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
power of the collective energy, the collective mindset, the collective desires. Um, and so as people begin to wake up, which is, I'm pretty sure you've seen that, like, so many more people are waking up, coming into their
Yes.
gifts.
Yeah.
This is why, so that we can work together in
Yeah.
creating a better world. And when you were talking about dismantling structures, I was reminded of so many women who come to me who are unhappy in their family structure, you know,
Hmm.
and not having that foundation because they're
Hmm.
living such a lie. And so
Hmm.
I'm seeing a lot of women finally be like, I'm done with this marriage, and
Yeah.
walking away. which is really interesting to me, because that, I just never thought that I would see that in the people that I work with. But it is an awakening for them,
Yeah.
like finally deciding that they don't deserve to be unhappy, that they're finally going to say
Mm-hmm.
yes to themselves and figure out what it is that does make them happy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff happening out there in the world. I
Hmm.
hold on to that every time I work with a client, and I feel their energy and I know their truth and I can, tap into their soul. It gives me such what's the word I'm looking for? It makes me feel excited
Hmm.
for the future. It
Hmm.
makes me feel like there is more good out there than we even are aware. And we're more similar than we are different. We're all connected, right? It's just this like, we've forgotten. We think of us all as separate. I love that you brought forward that feeling of oneness because that's something that I have really experienced since my own spiritual awakening. And it's just, I don't know, it's just the best thing ever. And I
Yeah.
want more people to experience that, regardless if it's through dragon healing or going to see a medium or whatever it is you want to do, Reiki.
Hmm.
It's all, I feel like there's like, there's like a core truth or core truths, and all of these things are just ways to get to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I love that. So I think you've answered all of my questions, but I do want to quickly talk about the experience. So the online experience. Can you tell people about that a little bit, and then I will bring through kind of the things that came up for me
Yes.
during
Yes.
my experience. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, so recently I've been offering dragon healing experiences where I will channel the dragon and invite them into the virtual space. And through the healing,
Yeah.
they work with your team to help you release anything that doesn't serve you, to help you heal, to help you feel more peace and calm and clarity. And I do that also primarily through singing bowls and drums, instruments, and whatever, because that's how my dragons came through. And so I just feel like it's such a wonderful way for people to experience it without
Hmm.
words, because we
Yeah.
attach so much to words, but to sound,
Hmm.
there's just feelings there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and
It's amazing.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is ever since I start, because I've been doing sound healing for years, but I only
Yeah.
started doing the dragon channeling recently. And since I've done that, that's when people have experienced the dragons in the session. So that's the difference between sound healings that I've done before and current sound healings now, is that people really feel the difference between what the dragon energy feels like in a sound healing and one without, because there's people who have been to both and they're like, holy
Right.
crap, I really saw my dragon, So
Yeah.
it was really cool for me to hear that.
Yeah. No, it was a really cool experience. And I'm actually glad I want to share. So we had originally were going to meet a few weeks ago, maybe like earlier this month. Then there was a mix up, and so we agreed to meet today. But I feel like that happened on purpose because then it gave me an opportunity to attend that session
Yes.
and experience that for myself. So I'll just quickly share some of the things, and I never shared any of this with you other than like one piece.
Hmm.
Um, when I was some things that I journaled afterwards, when I experienced like a ton of swirling energy, I kept seeing swirling energy over and over. I also see, like I'll call them fractals, but you know how you see energy and it's in all those different shapes and like you were experiencing at the beginning. You were telling us about at the beginning when you were seeing like white pulsating and then blue and then green. So I saw dragons coming forward. Specifically, I wrote down blue, green, and red.
Oh, beautiful.
Uh, and then I saw like, so if you're viewing this, you'll be able to, the listeners, you'll be able to see it. But essentially I saw like a tower, and they were like just kind of flying and circling around over and over again in a spiral around this tower of like, I don't know if it was a tower of light, a sword of light. Like, I don't know what it was, but it was something that was in that shape, like a sword. And then they were all around. And so I wrote, I saw a tower shape with color spectrum. So it was going from like dark to light, day to night. And then I wrote down, literally the color spectrum. That's how it's showing up for me,
Mm,
like a rainbow. And I thought that was so
so
cool. I
cool.
had a lot of vibrating crown chakra stuff happening during it. I kept seeing water, and I kept hearing water rushing and rippling. I wrote down fast and then slow. So there was a lot of like water connection. And then the really cool thing that I have shared with you before is I kept seeing images of oranges. And I was like, what the heck? Right? Because everything else was energy and shapes and dragons. And then I see these round oranges and passing back oranges back and forth. And I wrote down a feeling of giving and receiving. Right? And I was like, what? But I wrote it down anyways. And I shared this with you afterwards. Well, the reason I shared it is because you talked about leaving things out for the dragons, and you literally leave oranges for them. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God. So I honestly feel like I might have been receiving that message from the dragons to
Yeah.
say, like, hey, tell her, like, we know that she's leaving the
Yeah.
oranges for us. But I
Love
thought that was so cool. But it's
it.
so random. I'm like, what? What are these oranges for? And I just wrote down reclamation of self, take responsibility of self, and stepping out of a victim mentality, which
Mm,
is so relevant to my life because I am, that's like one of the biggest thing that I'm doing here. I don't know if you're like, know a lot about astrology, but our
mm,
north and south nodes in astrology, our north node kind of shows us our growth and evolution towards our highest path, and our
mm,
south node shows what we've already mastered and learned, but and which is great, and we can rely on that, but to make sure that we're not using that as like a crutch or a comfort
mm,
zone, like we really have to move forward to our north node. And so I was reading about this in great detail, as this is a topic that I love and study a lot in. And mine is literally about stepping out of a victim mentality, right? And
mm,
just accepting responsibility. And it's like, I feel like there's probably a lot of past life stuff and ancestral stuff of
mhm,
feeling like, not empowered, essentially. And so a lot of the message you've been sharing about the dragons is how to empower yourself and step out of that.
mhm.
And that we can. And so I loved that you shared that, and that came through. But that's what I experienced: a whole lot of relaxing and a whole lot of just like vibrating. And I felt clearer afterwards. I felt like there was clarity. And actually, I'm just kind of making this note in this moment. Since then, I've been feeling a lot of like kind of themes coming up in my work, whether it's through like working with tarot or through meditation or even with clients. There's this like commonality of messaging right now around how are we keeping ourselves small, right?
Mm,
Which I think is a nod to that victim mentality. Like, how are you keeping yourself small?
yeah.
And to step out of it, and to be great, and to be all that you are here to be. um yeah, and so yeah, thank you so much. I loved the experience, and I'm so glad that I took part in it. And you're doing amazing work.
Thank you.
um
I loved hearing what you experienced during that session. I
mm,
mean, I think that's so powerful, because
mhm.
I don't get to hear what everybody experiences, or maybe they're not comfortable or whatever. So when people
Yeah,
share, I just get so excited. So thank you.
yeah. Yeah, I do too. I'm like, tell me about it. I'm always
Yeah.
open afterwards because, and sometimes things, I mean, even in like if you're doing a mediumship session, or I do past life sessions and inner child healing and all that kind of stuff, like I don't always, I see the transformation in the moment, but I don't always see, because I know that things continue to unfold and spirit continues to work with those people afterwards. And I just feel extra lucky because a lot of my clients will share with me. They'll be like 2 years later, so remember me? And I'm like, how could I forget? Of course I remember you. And they'll share things that have happened since, and how everything has kind of come together. And it's a beautiful experience.
So good.
Um, we're so, I feel like we're just, you're so aligned. You're doing what you're meant to do.
Thank
Um,
you.
Absolutely. You being a nurse, in the past, is that something that you've totally stepped away from? Or do you
Not
still
quite.
incorporate that in your life?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That, I think that makes sense too, because I feel like those of us that, are kind of on this healing path probably have found other ways to embody the healer in a different avenue of their life. So you
Mhm.
being, drawn into nursing makes a lot of sense for me. For me, my background is in psychology, and I think that makes a lot of sense for me. So yeah, sometimes people are like, "What's my purpose, Amy?" And I
Oh,
think
I know.
sometimes
I get
we
that too.
expect, yeah, I think we expect our purpose to be like, well, you should be a nurse or you should be a psychologist or what
Yeah.
have you. And I certainly would have thought that about myself before. Like, I think this is what my purpose, but our purpose is like just in being ourselves and finding
Hmm.
out who that is,
Hmm.
and I always tap into like a core energy or value about someone. And so
Hmm.
for me personally, it's connection. And it would not surprise me at all if yours is also connection or there's an element of connection in there,
Yes,
as that's the thing
absolutely.
that makes me feel most alive, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh. And actually, as we were recording, every once in a while, I would like catch a number. So on this podcast, the numbers kind of speak to us. So we'll notice like 222 or 111 or whatever it is. And anytime I felt nudged to look at how long we were recording, every single time there was a like two in the number. So like 22, 22, or like I think there was a 44, 44, and I'm like, the numbers are speaking to us. Um, yeah. So thank you so much for
You're
sharing.
welcome.
Is there anything that you would like to share about like what you are planning next or what you're working on or any of that kind of stuff? We'd love to hear
Yes.
it.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share with your
Of
audience.
course.
So
Yeah.
we every month for I'm not sure how much longer, but my friend Amy and I are offering inner dance healing sessions, which are not um, the dragon healing sessions. If you've been to them, they're not like that. But I do um, channel the dragons during that session. It's just another healing modality that you can try. And so you can look for those. And then also, I offer in person spiritual retreats. My next one is a plant medicine retreat. So, if someone
Mm-hmm.
would like to experience spirituality in that way, it is August 24th to 27th. You can find it on my website. And then another retreat coming up in September, but that does not have plant medicine. But you will still have the same full blown, very in depth experience of healing
Mm-hmm.
and transformation. And all of that can be found on my website under services.
Okay. And are you in Texas?
Yes, I'm
Is
in the
that
Dallas,
correct?
Texas
Okay.
area. Hmm.
Okay, so our American listeners, our Texan listeners, definitely check her out in person. I wish I could. I'm up here in Canada, but you do virtual things. So
Yes,
people that are not living locally to you can also take part and experience you
absolutely.
and your healing sessions. Okay,
Yes.
amazing. I'll link all of that stuff in the show notes so everybody will know where to find you.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much again, Theresa. I hope you have the best day.
Thank you, Amy. Same to you. It's been such a pleasure.
Okay, take good care. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode here of the Intuitive Rising podcast. If you would like to continue the chats and join the community, please join us over on Facebook and search for the Intuitive Rising community. All are welcome. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider giving it a 5-star rating. If you'd like to connect with me directly, please visit my website at theintuitiverising.com.